All right. Thank you very much, Sarah Lee Jenricks, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Carnegie here in Thief River Falls. Tonight is our coverage of the debate here on KTRF on AM 1230 and 93.3 FM. I'm going to be turning the microphone over to Grant Nelson. He'll be leading us through the evening of this debate. A lot of candidates we'll be able to hear from tonight. So enjoy tonight's show. We are going to have an intermission just about partway through the show this evening as well. But again, a chance to hear all the candidates. With that, the debate from the Carnegie, we turn things over to Grant Nelson.
Thank you, Mark Allen, and welcome to the great debate. Sponsored by the Thief River Falls Chamber of Commerce and Thief River Falls Radio. I am your moderator, Grant Nelson. We're at the historic Carnegie Library in front of a live audience. It's a nice crowd here tonight. And we're also on the air at 12:30 a.m. and 93.1 FM and on the World Wide Web at trfradio.com. Now here's Ashley Nerhus from the Thief River Falls Chamber of Commerce to welcome you to tonight's debate.
And welcome to the 2018 candidate debate. My name is Ashley Nerhus, and I'm the director for the Thief River Falls Chamber of Commerce. I would first like to start off by saying thank you to everyone who is attending this evening's debate, and also thank you to all the candidates who are here. I know this is a really busy time for all of you, so thank you for being here. We have a very informative night planned, and we'll be hearing from many candidates, including the candidates running for U.S. House of Representatives District 7, State House of Representatives District 1A and 1B, the Pennington County Board District 3, City of Thief River Falls Alderman at Large and Ward 3, and then also the Thief River Falls School Board. But before we get to that, I would like to thank Thief River Falls Radio for moderating the event tonight and also broadcasting the debate live. And I would like to specifically thank Mark Allen and Jake Weber for being here and helping with the planning, and then also for Grant for doing the moderating. Without further ado, I would now like to give the mic back to Grant, and he will explain the ground rules for the evening.
Got a long night here, so we're going to briefly go over tonight's ground rules. Order of candidates was determined by the Chamber of Commerce, starting with candidates from the U.S. office, followed by state and then local. Our one representative for U.S. office, David Hughes, is running a little bit late, so we will work him into later on down in the order. Format for all candidates is the same: an opportunity to introduce yourself and your platform, followed by 2 questions and a chance for full rebuttal on each. 30 seconds. In the case of introductions, incumbents will go first, but in the case of questions, candidates will draw. We were going to draw straws. Instead, we decided it's incumbents first every time, except for Ward 3 in the city, where we're going to go alphabetically, and for the school board, we're going alphabetically just because there's so many. Order of response will switch with the second question, so each candidate gets the first question, except, again, in those groups that are so large, everybody's going to get the first question, then we'll go for a rebuttal, then everybody gets the second question. Questions from the audience will be taken and will be asked if time allows. If you have a question, right back there in that corner there's paper and pen. You can write down your question. If we have time at the end, we will take a look at them if time allows. Moderator is expected to strictly adhere to time allowances, with time cards used to assist candidates and a timekeeper to mark 30-second intervals. Candidates are allowed to use their time as they wish, but they can expect to be called on in the case of inaccurate information, unsubstantiated accusations, or if they fail to address the question. None of the candidates will have the context of any question before the debate begins. Those questions have been with me. However, because this is a chamber debate, candidates can anticipate business-related issues based on local concerns and events. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to call the chamber office, 681-3720. Thank you for running as a candidate this election season, and thank you for participating in Candidate Debate 2018. Okay, we're going to go right past the U.S. House of Representatives District 7, and we are going to start with the State House Representatives District 1A. If those who are running for that office would come and sit on the front 2 chairs over there, they would include incumbent Dan Fabian and his challenger, Steve Moeller. As the incumbent, Mr. Fabian, you may approach and go ahead and give your 1-minute introduction.
Well, thank you, Grant, and thanks to KTRF Radio, Thief River Falls Radio, and to all the folks for being here this evening. It's my pleasure to be here. I was asked by Ashley in an email to talk about what I'm proud of. You know, I'm proud of the folks of Northwest Minnesota. and what I have a passion for, I guess what actually the word was. And I have a passion for Northwest Minnesota and our rural values. Oftentimes we feel like sometimes in the legislature, what we stand for, what we want to do out here in rural Minnesota is not very important. I'm super proud to be your voice of common sense in St. Paul. I refer to that a lot. I'm really proud of tonight, the fact that this is a chamber event, that I've had the endorsement of the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce and the National Federation of Independent Small Businesses, was granted their Guardian of Small Businesses just today. In fact, it came out. And I hope to answer some more questions as the evening progresses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fabian. And Mr. Moll, if you would hold for just 1 second, I missed one thing. I just wanted to thank TRF Radio, Jake Weber and Mark Allen are on site. Lee G. Generics is back at the engineering station, and Mayor Brian Homer is our timer. So I just wanted to make mention of those because they're all doing a lot of good work here. Mr. Moeller, you can go ahead with your introduction.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Moeller, and I am running for the Minnesota State House in District 1A because, quite frankly, I am tired and I'm fed up with the type of toxic politics that goes on in St. Paul that favors scoring political points over benefiting the people who we represent or are supposed to represent. And while me and Mr. Fabian have definite policy disagreements, and I hope to talk about those, what tipped me into this race was the failure of the government in St. Paul this year to pass meaningful legislation. We had a 900-page omnibus bill that contained many things that the people of the state of Minnesota needed, but were buried inside a monstrosity of a piece of legislation that got vetoed after weeks of negotiation. People of Minnesota deserve better than what they're getting, and as your state representative, I promise I'll deliver on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moeller. Mr. Fabian, are you ready for your first question? Okay. First question is, given continued low unemployment, the emphasis in Northwest Minnesota is finding qualified labor. If elected, how would you help small and large businesses in our area find new employees? And I'm going to ask that you come back to the podium, if you would, just for the benefit of the microphone and also for our broadcast tonight. Would you like me to read the question over
Sure.
again?
Go ahead.
I will. Just given continued low unemployment, the emphasis in Northwest Minnesota is finding qualified labor. If elected, how would you help small and large business in our area find new employees? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Well, we have talked about this a lot, and one of the things that I'm encouraged by is that recently it seems that the communities in Northwest Minnesota have kind of come together to promote Northwest Minnesota as a place instead of supporting or trying to recruit people to an individual community, whether it's Roseau or Warroad or Thief River Falls. Now there seems to be more of an effort to promote Northwest Minnesota to get people to see the value of living here where we live and the great things that we have available. I've spent a lot of time with Dr. Bona at Northland Community and Technical College. They've got some really outstanding programs going on there. In fact, Northland was recently cited as the 5th most, or the best community college in the nation. There's a lot of positive things going on there. I think that a strong educational program, being able to get people into the jobs that we need, welding, technical things, a whole bunch of different things that we can do here locally. But just promoting the area, I think, is extremely important. We've got some workforce development projects that we've worked on in the legislature, I think, that have been successful. I'm glad to see that there is kind of a shortage because I think that what that does is it puts pressure on wages and it actually raises people's wages because the market is determining that, not some artificial minimum wage standard. The starting wages, it was interesting, Amazon announced yesterday or the day before that they're now going to be raising their minimum wage to $15 an hour. And I thought, wow, Marvin, Polaris, DigiKey, Textron are all well above $15 an hour, and when you factor in their benefits, it's really a good thing for workers. So those are the things that I like to focus on, working with local leaders to come up with ideas that work individually. I don't think that one size fits all, and I think that working together we can accomplish great things here in Northwest Minnesota in the labor market.
Thank you, Mr. Fabian.
Sure.
Mr. Moeller, are you ready for your first question? Mr. Moeller, given continued low unemployment, the emphasis in Northwest Minnesota is finding qualified labor. If elected, how would you help small and large businesses in our area find new employees? You have 2 minutes, sir.
That is the one of the prime issues of the day, isn't it? Is finding qualified labor for the jobs that are available. And at this point, I think we have to focus on a number of things. I know specifically in Thief River, but around the area, the first issue that comes to mind is we need affordable workforce housing in Thief River Falls. That's been an issue ever since my family and I relocated to the area. We need to encourage developers to come into the area to build homes, and we need to encourage developers to build homes that are affordable for people that we want to get into our community. I think the second thing that we need to do is we need to increase investment in our community assets. We have great schools in northwestern Minnesota, and we need to fund those schools so we can attract people to our area. People, workforce, workers, people who are going to be the next generation of workers in northwestern Minnesota, they're going to move here with their families. They're going to trust us in our community to raise their children, to educate their children. And we owe it to people moving to our area to give them the schools that they deserve and the programming that we need to have our children succeed in the future. The second thing we need to do is we need to give workers a choice. We need to give workers a choice on things to do. We need to give workers a choice on where to work. We need to encourage investment in small business. We need to give incentives for development of small business. It's a great place in Minnesota right now. If you're a large corporation, we want to reward that. But we also want to make sure that we are working towards encouraging investment in small businesses. Because when workers have choice, then we all get better. And wages go up, standards go up, and we have a better community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moeller. Do you have a rebuttal, Mr. Fabian? Mr. Moeller, you might as well go ahead and stay on up there then if there's no rebuttal. It's tough being the first ones. We're experimenting on the first couple through. The second question, Mr. Moeller, would be the collapse of the I-35 bridge in 2007 seems to have been the impetus for rebuilding infrastructure, not only in Minnesota, but across the country. What area of infrastructure do you see that still needs work in Minnesota? 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you. I remember exactly where I was when the bridge fell down in Minneapolis. I was out to dinner in Minneapolis, actually, when the bridge fell down. Catastrophic and scary when the numbers came out about the bridges, the projects in our state and in our country that needed repairing. When I look at northwestern Minnesota, I think of two things that are glaringly apparent to me as far as what we need for infrastructure needs. We need roads. We need better roads. We need wider roads. We need safer roads. We need to invest in those areas because, quite honestly, at this point, people coming in working at DigiKey, working at Textron, people up working at Marvin or Polaris. A lot of these people are coming from outside of the town where these businesses are located, and they need safe transportation routes to get to these areas. As far as infrastructure goes, I would also like to see more investment in a public transportation option for people up in northwestern Minnesota. I think that we have people who are coming into communities, and because of the lack in some areas of affordable housing, people are having to live a long way away from the place where they work. And I would like to see people be able to benefit from some sort of public transportation. If you live out in Newfoundland and you work in Thief River Falls, or you live in Newfoundland and you work up in Roseau, sometimes your car breaks down, you have issues with your driver's license, it's tough to get to work, and we all need to get to work. I think up here, those issues with transportations are highlighted because of the distance people have to travel. And when we talk about infrastructure, I think that's what we need to invest in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moeller. Mr. Fabian, would you step for your second question, please?
Sure.
The collapse of the I-35 bridge in 2007 seems to have been the impetus for rebuilding infrastructure, not only in Minnesota, but across the country. What area of infrastructure do you see that still needs work in Minnesota? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you. You know, interestingly, I had one of my former students who was actually on the bridge that day when it collapsed. Luckily, he survived, and things are going well. For me, it's about roads and bridges. It's about wastewater treatment facilities. We've talked a lot about drinking water. You know, I've had many conversations with the city here in Thief River Falls and what they're going through with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, trying to take care of some of the sediment problems and So for me, we've made a record investment in roads and bridges in the last legislative session. We did not raise a gas tax. People said it couldn't be done. We got $660 million of tax relief for people to go back into their own pockets out of the state budget, but we were also able to fund roads and bridges at kind of a historic level. And I'm proud of that. We think that moving forward in the bonding bill that we did this year, I like to see a bonding bill that's heavy on infrastructure, and that was one of our main points of emphasis this year in this last legislative session. Roads and bridges, wastewater treatment facilities, the things that small cities need through the BDPI program that they've used here in Thief River Falls and other communities, so that they can work on their infrastructure. It might be a water tower in Stephen, Minnesota, or a sewer line, and if you've been to Oslo recently, you see all the infrastructure stuff that's going on over there. They've had all kinds of problems. Infrastructure is kind of the backbone of our communities, whether it's our businesses, it's the homes that we live in, it's the schools. We all need those things. And for me, I think that we can do this. We don't need to raise taxes to do this. We have a surplus the way it's looking in our budget, and I want to continue improving roads and bridges.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fabian. Do you have any rebuttal, Mr. Moeller? Okay, with that, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That was State House Representative District 1A, incumbent Dan Fabian and Steve Moeller. Would you just give them a round of applause as we exchange? Up next is State House Representative District 1B, Deb Keel and Brent Lindstrom. And the incumbent will start us off. So, Ms. Keel, if you'd like to go ahead with your introduction, you have 1 minute, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out today, and thank you for our listening audience that is also paying attention to what is going on in our daily world. I serve District 1B, which consists of Polk, all of Polk, most of Pennington, except for the Thief River Falls area, and Red Lake County. And I'm very proud and humbled to serve you in these past few years. I have spent quite a bit of time now moving into health and human services issues, and am proud to say that I've worked on aging issues in Minnesota, which are a bit of a challenge. I think that what we have here is a lot of family members that help take care of each other, and so we don't see the conflict that is happening in the cities area, and making sure that our seniors, vulnerable adults are taken care of is a very important job for us to be doing, and we do it well within our services in Minnesota.
Thank you, Ms. Keel. Mr. Lindstrom, would you come up and do your introduction at the podium, please? You have 1 minute, sir.
All right. First, I want to thank the Thief River Chamber and TRF Radio for hosting this. My name is Brent Lindstrom, and I'm running for House Representative. I grew up on a beef and small grains farm east of Lake Bronson and attended school 12 miles away in Carlstead. I attended UND after graduation, but I determined the Air Force was a better path for me, so I enlisted for 4 years and retired 21 years later. After the Air Force, armed with my GI Bill, I went back to the university and finished my degree. My parents set the example for me by serving in township, co-op, and church boards, as well as being active members of the American Legion Auxiliary. That was further reinforced to me during my time in the Air Force, where service before self is a core value. I volunteered at countless community activities, been a scout leader, youth football coach and official, a hockey booster, and a founder, coach, and booster within the Grand Cities Lacrosse Association. At this point in my life, I have the availability to continue to serve my community, in this case, the entire district and the state of Minnesota, and I feel it's the right thing to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lindstrom. Ms. Keel, are you ready for your first question? Given continued low unemployment, the emphasis in Northwest Minnesota is finding qualified labor. If reelected, how would you help small and large businesses in our area find new employees? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Interestingly enough, I spent a little bit of time with the Humphrey Institute talking about what we can do, especially for, I'm going to go back to seniors, people who are retired but don't necessarily want to be out of work entirely. And so the conversation in Minnesota is going to how do we help people that want to slow down maybe working a lot, but still have the expertise to be able to work in our districts and help us with different issues. I met a gentleman the other day that is interested in, he's an engineering degree. He says, gosh, I could help MnDOT supervise a project. I don't want to do all of them, but I would certainly do one or two. And I think that's a way for us to give value to people that are have all that knowledge. And we have a lot of seniors in this district, and are going to have a lot more that may be offered, able to teach our students. The other thing, our young people, the other thing is that we have this excellent school like Northland Community College, University of Minnesota Crookston, where I think there are some wonderful ways for us to certify, get people out in the workforce, maybe reinforce what it is they need to know to be able to fill a need in the area. And I have talked to some businesses that said they are more than willing to work with somebody who wants to work in a new field. And one thing they said to me was they know that somebody that is a little bit more senior will show up on time for work. And when they're done, they'll say, you know what, that's fine, I can go home. I don't need to be paid for the time you don't need help. And I find on the farm that is a very excellent way to find good help when we need people to work extra jobs. So I think we need to expand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keel. Mr. Lindstrom, would you come to the podium for your first question, please? Given continued low unemployment, the emphasis in Northwest Minnesota is finding qualified labor. If elected, how would you help small and large businesses in our area find new employees? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I believe to help the recruiting process is to develop more affordable workforce housing here in the area. I know working at New Flyer in Crookston, we have people that work all the way from Warren down through Fertile out to McIntosh and even into Grand Forks. So people are willing to travel. We can increase public transportation. They have the Tri-Valley bus runs from East Grand Forks to Crookston. Schedules are posted, and I know they have a fair ridership riding from East Grand Forks to Crookston. But it can be expanded. We just have to look into ways to provide amenities. Honestly, as a recreation and tourism is my degree, and that's what people want, things to do off-duty too, or off work hours. I'm still in military thinking. But to have amenities so that their kids can have opportunities in the community that they live in. It's more of a quality of life thing on top of being in a job that pays a good wage. You like to unwind and play too. So it's to promote the amenities we have, lakes, rivers, streams, woods to hunt in, and make it a whole package deal instead of just you can get this great job, but we have this for the rest of your family too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindstrom. Do you have a rebuttal, Ms. Keel? Mr. Lindstrom, if you're ready for your second question, we'll go ahead with that. The collapse of the I-35 bridge in 2007 seems to have been the impetus for rebuilding infrastructure, not only in Minnesota, but across the country. What area of infrastructure do you see that still needs work in Minnesota? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, living close to Grand Forks, and if you've driven over there in the last couple of years, you've probably lose the front of your car driving in one of their potholes. I definitely believe that the streets on this side of the river and the highways are in much better shape, and I want to continue to make sure that's true. But one of the things I believe up here is rural broadband. Rural broadband is going to be a key, which can also go back to the first question, but allow people to work from home. Allow our students in schools to maybe get that course that maybe the local school can't afford to have that instructor or that program in the classroom, but maybe we can get online with that rural broadband into a bigger cooperative of educators. It brings businesses to the customers and customers to business. So if you're at home and you need that thing that we just can't get down at the hardware store, we can order it. It brings patients to healthcare. There's a large movement toward online healthcare where you can have teleconference with your doctor. Rural broadband, I believe, is one of the biggest hindrances to growing this area, and we need to invest much deeper into that.
Thank you, Mr. Lindstrom. Ms. Keel, if you're ready for your second question, you can come to the podium. The collapse of the I-35 bridge in 2007 seems to have been the impetus for rebuilding infrastructure, not only in Minnesota, but across the country. What area of infrastructure do you see that still needs work in Minnesota? And you have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Well, I have to say that I'm very proud of the bonding bill that we passed that did wonders for our rural infrastructure, help with, as Representative Fabian said, our water issues, and also rebuild roads. I do know that there's some projects that were delayed until next year because, as I spoke earlier, there is not enough people to supervise projects, and businesses are very busy. So we do need more infrastructure repairs, but they are on their way. And I'm very encouraged to see us be able to make sure that we maintain the roads that we have. I am a sugar beet farmer, and so roads are very important for us to get our crops, not just sugar beets, but wheat, soybeans. We got to make sure we can get all those commodities to where they need to go. And so roads are a very important part in rural Minnesota here in the northwest area of Minnesota. But also, my opponent spoke about broadband. I am proud to say that we did some really good investments in broadband. As you know, to the east of Thief River Falls, more and more people are able to get Wi-Fi, and yes, it is important. Had the governor not vetoed the bill that we passed in the spring of the year, there would have been more telemedicine, which was very important to Minnesota, so that people can get that contact when they maybe can't leave the house, and very encouraging to see what that will do for those who have got some health care issues, and it will also help our nursing service. So infrastructure is very important for Minnesota, and you're right, that did kind of direct us toward making sure that our infrastructure is up, and we didn't have the failure of bridges that once happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keel. Mr. Lindstrom, do you have any rebuttal? Then with that, thank you very much, both you ladies and gentlemen. That's State House Representative District 1B candidates Deb Keel and Brent Lindstrom. When we started this evening, David Hughes was running behind just a little bit. He, along with Colin Peterson, are running for the U.S. House of Representatives District 7. Mr. Peterson has not been able to come tonight, but Mr. Hughes is here. So, Mr. Hughes, if you want to go ahead and just go up to the pedestal and go ahead with your introduction, you have 1 minute, sir.
My name is Dave Hughes. I'm the Republican candidate for Congress, Minnesota 7. I am running for Congress to help save the Republic from decades of bad policy and bad leadership. I want to be a reinforcement in the U.S. House of Representatives for the Republican majority there to push the conservative agenda forward. And most importantly, I want to partner with our President, President Trump, to help him accomplish the America First agenda as quickly as possible. My opponent, Colin Peterson, is part of the Democratic opposition and resistance. And I believe that if he is reelected, he will vote for Nancy Pelosi, and their effort is to reverse the progress that we've made these last 24 months. So I ask for your vote because I want to help the President accomplish this agenda that has brought us economic prosperity, greater security, and greater liberty for all Americans. And that's my goal in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. And you can go ahead and stay at the pedestal there, and I'll ask you your first question if you're ready. Are you in favor of movement to universal health care or some other form of national health care system, such as single payer? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
I am not in favor of going in that direction at all. Last year in 2017, my opponent, Colin Peterson, held a number of health care town halls. I was able to attend 2 of them, and he said in no uncertain terms to the group present that he thought that single-payer health care or Medicare for all was inevitable. At one of those especially, he said it 5 or 6 or 7 times and gave no indication to the audience that he had any problem with that or would oppose that. I would adamantly oppose that. This is not England, this is not Canada, and I think both those systems have had and are experiencing lots of trouble. I think the key to improving health care, both reducing the cost of health care, reducing the cost of health insurance, and improving access and all the measures that we want to improve in medicine is not to be found in a single-payer system. I think that if the federal government can knock down some of the hurdles to those improvements and allow the states to work with the private industry and the private sector, that's where the solutions are to be found. For sure, healthcare is a universe of issues, and so I look forward in Congress to working with experts on both sides of the aisle, hearing expert witness testimony from everybody to come to a solution. But I don't think it's to be found in some sort of socialist utopia or idea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. Your second question. Public shootings have been a sad occurrence across the nation. Some would say that we need to work on the reason one person would create such tragic loss of human life, while others would say restrictions to our Second Amendment rights would be the better answer. What do you feel is the answer? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Can you repeat the first part of that sentence?
Absolutely.
I apologize.
It was a long question. Public shootings have been a sad occurrence across the nation. Some would say that we need to work on the reason one person would create such tragic loss of human life, while others would say restrictions to our Second Amendment rights would be the better answer. What do you feel is the answer? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Okay. Two issues. As far as I know, that most of these shootings, the mass shootings in schools and other situations, we see a common link there, a common trend, and that is young white males who have recently come off of psychotropic drugs. That seems to be the pattern there, from troubled homes. So I think that any new infringements on our Second Amendment rights is a mistake. And for me, I have said it recently, I'm sort of a caveman on the Second Amendment. I will abide no new infringements. And so if I'm elected to Congress, I will not go with the bump stock ban. Colin Peterson wanted to do that. He indicated some willingness to consider increasing the age for purchase of long arms. I would not abide that as well. So I don't think new infringements on law-abiding citizens is going to help with these troubled people that do these mass shootings. I think what's the solution there is to address the mental health issue, and how that is not, somehow there's not a connection there between the mental health and law enforcement and the lack of information there. And so I think that's where the solution is, not in new infringements on our Second Amendment rights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. Your opponent did not come tonight, so there will be no rebuttal. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is U.S. House of Representatives in District 7, David Hughes. And would you give him a round of applause, please?
Thank you, everybody.
He's one of our candidates. Okay, we're going to move on now to the Pennington County Commissioner race, and that would include David Bach and Neil Peterson. Neil Peterson's the incumbent, so Neil, if you'd like to step to the podium, you can go ahead with your introduction and statement. You have 1 minute, sir.
All right, thank you, Grant. And I'd like to say thank you to the Chamber and KTRF Radio and to the district residents of District 3 for their support and their continued support for in the upcoming election. You know, as a farmer and lifelong resident of Pennington County, I understand the opportunities and challenges what it takes to make a living and raise a family and plan for retirement in this community. I've worked and would continue to like the opportunity to continue to work with to ensure our county services are maintained and improved in the most cost-effective and effective manner possible, and to be a voice from our county to the state legislature, and because I think that we need, as commissioners and elected officials from this area, to be in contact with our state and federal legislatures to make sure that our concerns up here are not missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Bach, would you like to come up to the podium and make your opening statement and introduce yourself? And you have 1 minute, sir.
I'm Dave Bach. I'm also a lifelong resident, product of Thief River School District. I graduated in 1974. I've been self-employed for a lot of my career. I started at Arctic Cat in, I believe it was 1995, where I am still presently employed. I just think we need a little bit more common sense and a little conservative, and our roads need to be addressed, and our taxes are a little stronger than they should be, and I'll do the best I can for the people who vote me in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. Mr. Peterson, if you'd like to come to the podium, you are the incumbent. We'll start with you for our questioning. And what do you see as the most pressing needs for infrastructure or capital projects in the county? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I think looking forward, I think we need to keep maintaining the roads as well as we have been. I do think that we are building a bridge on Mark Boulevard to connect CASA 8. But I think by looking at some of the problems that we have within the community as far as people getting across the river and across the bridge, I think certainly down the road once we get this other project done, is to build another bridge on the east side of Thief River Falls. One of the other pressing issues we have is the Enbridge tax court thing that is hanging over the county's head, and that would be a substantial hurt to our county if we end up having to pay back those millions of dollars. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Bach, would you like to come to the podium and we'll ask you your first question? Okay, Mr. Bach, what do you see as the most pressing needs for infrastructure or capital projects in the county? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, I think our county roads have started to slip to some degree over the last few years. Being township supervisor since 2003, I know it's cheaper to maintain roads than it is to repair roads. So we have some good employees in the county. I think if we give them the tools they need to work with, and they will be able to bring these roads back into shape. But several people here live on some of these roads that got tore up really bad this spring. In the last few springs there's been issues. Granted, we can't control the frost, but we can control the shape of the roads when they go into a winter. And as far as other infrastructure, we're getting a nice set of paved roads in the county. It's nice to have some decent shoulders on them, so there is room to stop if you have problems, and I don't see any reason that should not continue. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bach. Do you have any rebuttal, Mr. Peterson?
Okay.
Then let's go ahead and start with your next question. It gets to be a lot of moving around sometimes. The second question for you, Mr. Bach, will be, are county taxes too high, about right, or pleasantly low? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, they're not pleasantly low. I do know, being a landowner since I believe it was 1978, my taxes have gone up considerably faster than my land values have, and I don't have any more permanent buildings, or actually I have one less permanent building when I bought the place. So yes, I think our taxes are accelerating too fast, and it's something that definitely should be looked at, and we could be a little bit more conservative on some things, and I can't say as what they would be because I'm not privy to a lot of that information, but I do pay my taxes. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bach. Mr. Peterson, would you come to the podium for your second question? Mr. Peterson, are county taxes too high, about right, or pleasantly low?
I would have to agree that they're not pleasantly low. As a taxpayer myself, it hurts to write that check twice a year. That's why I've ran for this office, to try to work on controlling those costs. I think that some of the things that we have to deal with as a county is unfunded mandates and underfunded mandates. So with an unfunded mandate, the state tells us what we need to do and how we should pay for it, and that's why some of our county taxes are higher. Is every time we have a sex offender or something like that, all those costs are borne by the county. Underfunded mandates cost us in child protection, and if we have to send kids out of the county has to pay for the majority of those costs. And that's why I would like to continue to work with the state legislature to eliminate some of those problems. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Do you have any rebuttal, Mr. Bach? Okay, well, with that, thank you very much. These are your candidates for Pennington County Commissioner David Bach and Neil Peterson. Up next, we'll have City Council Ward 3, if those 4 candidates would come to the front to the chairs. And this will be a slightly different order. We will not be paying attention to anything as far as incumbent going first or anything like that. There's 4 of them. We're going alphabetically. Everybody will have a chance to go up, do their introduction. They'll sit. Then after that, they will come to the podium for their first question. So, City Council Ward 3, Chris Anderson. Mr. Anderson, would you come to the podium and go ahead and do your introduction? You have 1 minute, sir.
Hi, I'm Chris Anderson, lifelong resident of Thief River Falls. Graduated high school here. I raised my kids here. Worked at DigiKey for 8 years now. Also a park manager for 2 of our trailer courts in town. basically what I'd like to do if I get elected is try and help the community, listen to the people, try and get things settled, figured out, make things easier in town, and basically, just do something good for the town for once. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Up next, Gary Hintz. Would you come to the podium and do your introduction and opening statement, if you like? And Mr. Hintz, you have 1 minute, sir.
My name is Gary Hintz. I lived in Thief River Falls since 1997, lived in Ward 3 all of those years. I raised 4 wonderful children, and if elected, I'd like to continue the growth of the city and help children feel safe in a safe place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hintz. Up next, Mike Lawrenson. Mike, would you come to the podium, please? And you can go ahead with your introduction statement if you have it. And you have 1 minute, sir.
Mike Lawrenson. I've lived in northern Minnesota pretty much my entire life. My wife and 11 children actually have made home to Thief River Falls over the past 10 years. If elected, my full focus will be to be the voice of Ward 3 and channel those voices to the city board. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrenson. Edward Turn, would you come to the podium, please, sir? And you can go ahead with your introduction, and you have 1 minute, sir.
Okay, thank you. It's great to see the turnout tonight, and I think we all should be applauded for all the candidates that have stepped forward and running for the different positions in Thief River Falls. So many times we don't have volunteers, and I just want to thank everybody for stepping forward. Just quickly, name is Ed Turn. I've been in this area my entire life. I've been in banking my whole life. Goes back to my JC days, and I always felt that was a stepping stone for me to be involved in communities and looking at how we can make communities better. And one of the JC creeds is service to humanity is the best work of life, and I truly believe that. After all these years, I've been involved in many, many organizations. And
that's 1 minute, sir.
I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Turn. Mr. Anderson, if you'd like to come back to the podium, I'll be ready with your first question. Okay, Mr. Anderson, downtown Thief River Falls has experienced some revitalization. However, there are still empty buildings. What do you feel the City Council could do to fill buildings and perhaps use downtown to develop a more defined personality for Thief River Falls? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, it'd be nice to see, City Council try and get something new moved in here. I guess, not being in office or anything, I can't really say or how it can be done, but I guess getting elected, I'd learn and try and figure it out as I go. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Hintz, would you come to the podium for your first question? And there will be an opportunity for rebuttal after everyone has answered their first question. Mr. Hintz, downtown Thief River Falls has experienced some revitalization. However, there are still empty buildings. What do you feel the City Council could do to fill buildings and perhaps use downtown to develop a more defined personality for Thief River Falls? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I feel the city, if bring in new businesses, help those that are already established in the downtown area to expand and grow, and just make it a more enjoyable place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hintz. Mike Lawrenson, would you come to the podium, please? And Mr. Lawrenson, your first question. Downtown Thief River Falls has experienced some revitalization. However, there are still empty buildings. What do you feel the City Council could do to fill buildings and perhaps use downtown to develop a more defined personality for Thief River Falls? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
With a small amount of campaigning I've done so far, some of the voice of Ward 3 has said that to look at moving towards a tax-free or labor tax-free area to try and entice people. Work with different other cities to see what they have done to revitalize the area. I'm looking like, for example, Duluth, or I'm looking at like East Grand Forks. What did and other neighboring towns, they actually revitalized their dying areas of town. I would also look towards organizations like, I think it's Advanced Thief River Falls, which they are working with the Chamber of Commerce and stuff to try and make sure that they can focus on that. Again, I don't have all the answers, but I'd be looking to those individuals that could help me. So,
Thank you, Mr. Lawrenson. Edward Turn, would you come to the podium, please? Mr. Turn, downtown Thief River Falls has experienced some revitalization. However, there are still empty buildings. What do you feel the City Council could do to fill buildings and perhaps use downtown to develop a more defined personality for Thief River Falls? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, I think that they're certainly on the right road in trying to get business in Thief River, working together with the Thief River Chamber, the Advance group with jobs, and I think another thing that could be done is, and maybe they are doing it, I'm not aware of it, is to contact alumni that have left Thief River Falls and maybe are well established and maybe just want to move back into the area. And I know some communities are contacting alumni, and I know of some instance where the people have moved back and started their small shops, and I think that's what we got to be looking at as a service industry for that in downtown. So I think that the continued effort, and I think the council and the chamber and everyone else should be commended on their efforts on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turn. Is there anybody who has rebuttals based on the first question? Okay, you can go ahead and have a seat then. Thank you so much. We'll start again alphabetically. Chris Anderson, would you come to the podium, please? Mr. Anderson, there has been renewed discussion of whether Thief River Falls should have a public pool or a splash park. There is donated money and interest that might help in such a project. What do you feel is the answer to the pool versus splash park question, and what would be the proper use for the current money that is available? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I figured that was going to come up. To me, I think, the two committees should come together, the splash park committee and the pool committee come together again, work together, come up with the money and have one built as a whole. Find a central location where it can be together instead of one where I think is the beach is where the splash park is going to go. But yeah, I think I think they should be together for all ages, not just one. But that'd be my suggestion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Gary Hintz, would you come to the podium, please, for your second question? Mr. Hintz, there's been renewed discussion of whether Thief River Falls should have a public pool or a splash park. There is donated money and interest that might help in such a project. What do you feel is the answer to the pool versus splash park question, and what would be the proper use for the current money that is available? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
I believe it should be up to the community, whether let the people make their voices. I've been out and I've talked to a few. A lot want a splash park, a lot want a pool. I say they vote. The money is there. I have my family member. I do have a family member on the Rotary Club pushing for the splash park. I have friends pushing for the pool. I think it should be up to the community. I think both of them will be beneficial to the community in either way, no matter which direction they take.
Thank you, Mr. Hintz. Mike Lawrenson, would you come to the podium, please, for your second question? Mr. Lawrenson, there has been renewed discussion of whether Thief River Falls should have a public pool or a splash park. There is donated money and interest that might help in such a project. What do you feel is the answer to the pool versus splash park question, and what would be the proper use for the current money that is available? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I was almost positive that this question would be asked. In fact, again, when I'm asking my Ward 3 individuals, I actually am starting a poll. I actually have a poll on my Facebook page, and I'm starting to query people on Ward 3 as what they say. Believe it or not, over 66% of the people say they do not want a splash park. And there is a 81% that say they do want a pool. Most people say that splash park is great for smaller kids. Due to the fact that it is in northern Minnesota, we do not have that many warm days. One thing, when we were looking at the splash park, and I was involved with some of those meetings, I understand that we were going to be using fresh water from our tower. We can't hardly, I shouldn't say we can't manage what we have for water right now if we're going to be pumping out thousands of gallons a day of just wastewater, if you will, for a splash park. I would say that if we're going to do it, we need to do it right and look at ways of recycling that water and keeping that water a little bit warmer, because no kid will want to be doing that. I also would look at other cities, like for example, Roseau. They put one in. They're experiencing some issues as well. There's other counties there that put a splash park in, and they're starting to see regulations on water conservation. And so that is a concern for mine. I'm not going to say that I'm so totally anti-splash park. I'm just going to say that we need to look at it slightly different, because the way they were looking at doing it, it was going to be totally wasting all that water. I would say that I would be in favor of putting in a pool, obviously, because my Ward 3 has spoken. I would say that trying to find a place, for example, like by Franklin Pool, that is one individual made a recommendation, putting by Franklin Pools or Franklin School, so we could actually utilize or make a dual pump system so that it can be managed in both areas, so we can control some of the costs there. So that's what I have.
That's 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrenson. Edward Turn, would you come to the podium for your second question, please? Mr. Turn, there has been renewed discussion of whether Thief River Falls should have a public pool or a splash park. There is donated money and interest that might help in such a project. What do you feel is the answer to the pool versus splash park question? And what would be the proper use for the current money that is available? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, I think the good thing is that we're getting into the cold season now, so we can work all winter on looking at what's best, the splash park or the pool or both. But the splash park, in my knowledge, is limited to the age of who can use it, and and with the water usage, I'm not versed on really how that all works. You know, how much water is being used and so on. But it would enhance. I believe it's over at the Tyndall Park that they're looking at the splash park, and maybe it would enhance that area. As far as the pool goes, you know, there's so many different things with pools. I've been associated a little bit with pools, and the cost and the maintenance, the size of the pool, where it's going to be, and things like that. And we are limited with the weather. However, with the growing population and the young people and adults using the pool, it probably would be another asset for our community. But how it's going to be financed, the dollars, we're back to who's paying for it, how are you going to pay for it, how does it affect the taxes if that's the case. I'm not opposed to it, but I am in favor of some real good research and understanding of really what is involved with maintaining a pool, not just building it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turn. And are there any rebuttal statements from any of the Ward 3 candidates? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, those are your candidates for City Council Ward 3 in Thief River Falls.
time for halftime. Not as much entertainment as you might expect at a halftime, but we are going to take a break, and it's going to be an actual 5-minute break. This is a radio break, so it will be exactly 5 minutes. So in 5 minutes, we'll be starting again. This is The Great Debate, sponsored by the Thief River Falls Chamber of Commerce and Thief River Falls Radio. Mark Allen, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, Grant. And again, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. When we come back, we'll continue with the great debate. More city council and a whole bunch of school board members to talk and to get their views from. Grant Nelson will continue with the debate from the Carnegie in just a moment on Thief River Falls Radio.
AM 1230 KTRF and online at trfradio.com.
Okay, we've had our break. Let's get back to it. Let's have our candidates for City Council Alderman at Large. They include Steve Narverud and Joshua Thompson. Gentlemen, if you could come to the front and take a seat. In this case, we have an incumbent, Steve Narverud. So, Mr. Narverud, if you would come to the front podium, you can do your introduction and statement, and you have 1 minute, sir.
My name is Stephen Narverud. I am your Alderman at Large at this time for the City of Thief River Falls. Take a minute to thank the Chamber and KTRF Radio and Grant for moderating this. I think that's great of you, and I'm really impressed. This is nice to see. We've got people involved. I'm a lifelong resident of Thief River Falls, been a homeowner for over 30 years, married to my wife Carmen. We have one son, John. I went to school here, obviously. I went through Lincoln, I went through Northland, and I finished my 4-year degree at Morehead State. And boy, that's quick, Homer. I think one of the most important things at Thief River right now is our growth. And it's the one thing that we have to make a plan for. And right now in the city, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a comprehensive plan redone. I'm a good listener. I think I can communicate well with you, and I can effectively solve most of the problems, and I've enjoyed working on the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narverud. Joshua Thompson, would you come to the podium, please? Mr. Thompson, go ahead with your introduction, and you have 1 minute, sir.
Thank you. My name is Joshua Thompson, and I'd like to say thank you for everyone who has shown up tonight, and thanks to KTRF, thanks to the Chamber. I've lived in Thief River Falls a good portion of my life. I've spent a lot of time traveling, lived all over this great country. One of the things I'm really passionate about is our U.S. Constitution. I'm also very passionate about hearing what people have to say, what they want for change, and those voices need to be heard. I live in town currently. My wife and I have a wonderful home. We have 4 wonderful children and 2 dogs, and I look forward to trying to make this county great.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. As the incumbent, Mr. Narverud, if you'd come to the podium, I will give you your first question. Mr. Narverud, downtown Thief River Falls has experienced some revitalization. However, there are still empty buildings. What do you feel the City Council could do to fill buildings and perhaps use downtown to develop a more defined personality for Thief River Falls? You have 2 minutes, sir.
One of the things we've been working with is the Downtown Business Association. They've started, the City of Thief River Falls is going to do a street project on Labrie, Horace, from 4th to 1st Street. We're hoping not only to make it a more inviting place, we're going to change some of the sidewalks so they're a little bit wider, a little bit more of a kind of a park atmosphere downtown, a little more greenery. Again, we're co-oping with the Downtown Business Association to make this happen. Hopefully they've got, and they do, they have some ideas, and hopefully we can work together and get this funded. We should have some new streets by the end of this time next year. We should have some new street lighting up. It should look actually remarkably better. We tried to change a few things, and we got told by the residents that they don't want us to change some of the things, like downtown plowing. We were thinking we could do that year-round and have calendar parking. That didn't work. So there's a lot that can be done. Do I think the City of Thief River Falls can fill the buildings? No, we can't. We can't force anyone to come here. The trick is we can make it as inviting as possible so that they do come, and that's what we've been trying to do. And I think you'll see within the next year and a half, 2 years, there will be a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narverud. Joshua Thompson, would you come to the front podium, please, for your first question? Mr. Thompson, downtown Thief River Falls has experienced some revitalization. However, there are still empty buildings. What do you feel the City Council could do to fill buildings and perhaps use downtown to develop a more defined personality for Thief River Falls? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to find a way to make downtown more inviting, whether that be lowering taxes, better curb appeal. We just have to find a way to bring more incentives for businesses to come into the area. I think businesses are the option to filling a lot of those empty buildings. We just have to find a reason for them to want to come here. I know that we do have some buildings that are even being used for other purposes. I know we have a great arena that could be used for many more purposes that can bring revenue into the city. I also know that you know, it's going to be up to the people. We have to let the people be heard. We have to give them a voice, you know, as far as other options. Other than that, I think, you know, revitalizing it, you know, like Steve said, you know, we can make it look better, but it only goes so far. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Do you have any rebuttal, Mr. Narvard? Mr. Thompson, you can go ahead and stay on up because we'll give you your second question while you're still up at the podium. Mr. Thompson, there has been a renewed discussion of whether Thief River Falls should have a public pool or a splash park. There is donated money and interest that might help in such a project. What do you feel is the answer to the pool versus splash park question, and what would be the proper use for the current money that is available? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Seems to be a heated question. I've asked a lot of people about this, what they would like to see happen. And the answer I received the most is they want to know where's the pool that we were supposed to receive years ago. I don't know much about the pool that we were supposed to receive years ago, but I know that people seem to have an interest in a pool. I know that Oakland Park has a lot of space available to do new things with. I know that people have expressed to me that they definitely don't want to see a splash park, especially on a beach that's filled with goose manure. I definitely wouldn't want my children playing in something like that. I do agree with Mike that it is an extreme expense to have a splash park. It's going to not only cost us money to in water resources, but it could ultimately end up costing the residents of Thief River for taxes for that water. I think that we can use a pool in a better sense by providing more jobs for people to run that pool, to run it effectively, and it could also bring in revenue to the city and great entertainment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Steve Narvard, would you come to the pedestal for your second question, please? Mr. Narvard, there has been renewed discussion of whether Thief River Falls should have a public pool or a splash park. There is donated money and interest that might help in such a project. What do you feel is the answer to the pool versus splash park question, and what would be the proper use for the current money that is available? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I'll take out the versus, first of all, because I don't think it's a versus question right now. I think we should probably have a swimming pool, and the splash park should be attached to it. We've already spent public dollars. We have money spent on the MEC. That area has already been reserved for a pool. There's actually design out there for that pool. The water is there. The sewer is there. The restrooms and the changing rooms are also there. It's just to put the building in, to be quite blunt about it. Can we afford both with taxes? No. We're going to take, this is going to take private dollars. This is going to take someone stepping up and saying that they are going to help pay for this, because we as Thief River Falls residents can't afford it. The one question I would like to answer is, what would I like to do with that money that's sitting there right now? I think that'd make an excellent maintenance fund to start out with. And that's really what everyone in the area says, the same thing. If you're going to start a pool, first of all, don't make it just an outdoor pool, because we'd have too short a period of time to use it. Second, make sure you have your maintenance fund before you worry about how you're going to pay for building it, because that's the one thing that nobody has when they need it, is the maintenance. I'm in favor of both, to be honest with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narvud. Do you have any rebuttal, Mr. Thompson? Okay. Thank you very much. Then, ladies and gentlemen, those are the candidates for City Councilman, Alderman at Large, Steve Narvud and Joshua Thompson. I'd like to give kudos to the City Council ward candidates for taking on that second question. I mean, everybody knew it was coming, and they handled it very well. Up next, we have the school board. If all the candidates for school board, all 8 of you, could come to the front and take a seat. This is another one of those where we have so many candidates that instead of going for an incumbent first or anything like that, we will go alphabetically. We're going to be missing 2. Darren Robson had to leave because of a family emergency, and Craig Matson was regrettably out of town, so those 2 will not be included in tonight. Tonight for the school board, we have then 7 candidates, and we'll start off with Crystal Keefe. Ms. Keefe, if you would step to the front podium, and we will give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. And ma'am, you have 1 minute.
Okay. I'm Crystal Keefe. I moved to this area about 10 years ago with my husband Chance. Together we have 5 children. I work at a public accounting firm in town here. I am running for school board because I want to make sure that the children are always coming first, that their needs are always met, whether it's safety or education or whatever it is that they need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keefe. Up next would be John Lindgren. Mr. Lindgren, would you please tell us about yourself, do your introduction, and you have 1 minute, sir.
Thank you. My name is John Lindgren. I've lived in town here about 30 years. Been a welder out of Forsberg for 28 years. I'm proud to have served on the school board for a number of years now. And I married to my wonderful wife Valerie. We have 2 kids that both graduated from Lincoln as well as my wife. And I look forward to keeping working with a wonderful team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindgren. Up next would be Carol Schmitz. Carol, would you come to the front podium, please? And you can share with us your introduction. Ma'am, you have 1 minute.
Okay. Hi, I'm Carol Schmitz, and I'm running for school board for School District 564. A little bit about me. I'm married to Gail, and he's a CPA in Thief River Falls. We've lived in this area most of our lives. We have 2 children, Benjamin and Laura. My background is education. I taught first grade for 40 years, and after the 40 years of teaching first grade, I felt like I loved it so much that I wanted to go back and be a long-term sub, and so I did that for a few years. And it seems to me that working in the schools like I have, that the next step would be to be on the school board and represent. And I feel that an educator belongs on our school board.
Thank you, Ms. Schmitz. Mike Spears, you're up next if you'd approach the podium, please. Mr. Spears, go ahead with your introduction, and you have 1 minute, sir.
Hi, my name is Mike Spears. I've been a resident of Thief River since 1979, so I consider myself homegrown, I guess. I've been on the school board since January of 1999, so had a long term on there too. My wife, Cammie, and myself, we have 4 children, 3 of which have graduated from Lincoln and 1 that is a sophomore yet. I'd just like to thank the teachers and the staff at the schools. My oldest daughter is going into the teaching profession. She's currently in her 2nd year of college, so it's glad to see that kids in our district and all of our schools, the number of students that come back to teach here. So that speaks volumes for our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spears. Ann Ulrich, you'd be up next if you'd approach the podium. Is it Ulrich or is it Ulrich? It is Ulrich. And if you would give us your introduction, ma'am, you have 1 minute.
All right, I'm Ann Ulrich. I am married and I have 2 children in Challenger at this time. I grew up down the road in Plummer, went to Mayville State for college, went to Fargo for a couple years and have been here for almost 20 years now. I worked at DigiKey for 18 years, and now I am a stay-at-home mom, and I want to give my kids the best future possible, and I want to make sure their education is the best. I'd like to be able to be a part of that.
Thank you, Ms. Ulrich. Ryan Walseth, would you come up to the podium, please, and go ahead and give us your introduction? And sir, you have 1 minute.
My name is Ryan Walseth, and I am a lifelong resident of Thief River Falls, born here, raised here. And basically it's all about the kids, of which I have 3. I have 1 daughter in Challenger, 1 daughter in Franklin, and then my son is at Lincoln High School. So 3 very good reasons to be here and to serve on the board of the school board if elected. So I own Bergen Travel in town. I love serving. You'll often see me at school board meetings, city council meetings, just for fun. So I just like being involved and being a part of things. And currently I'm the co-chair of the Downtown Development Association, and in the past I've been chair of the Chamber of Commerce. So I like to be civically involved, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walseth. And finally, Michelle Westerman, would you come to the podium and give us your introduction, please? And Ms. Westerman, you have 1 minute.
Okay. I'm Michelle Westerman. I am the owner of Johnson's Riverside Incorporated and North Star Promoting Independence. I grew up in Thief River Falls and had a really positive educational experience, and the education I received gave me a great platform to succeed in college, and I'm excited that my 4 children will also have that same experience. I am passionate about ensuring that all students in the district are receiving the best educational opportunities possible while finding creative ways to use our budget. I believe that it is important to build relationships amongst students, families, superintendent, administrators, school board, educators, district employees, and community members in order to improve the communication and morale. We need to empower our educators and other district employees to use their skills and abilities to inspire and engage students in ways they learn best. Our goal should be to make it a place where new and current educators are proud and want to invest their careers and talents long term. These factors will directly benefit the student's educational experience.
Thank you very much, Ms. Westerman. And we'll get on with our questions here in just a second. I want to remind everybody, though, that we are doing a video here, and this will be available on trfradio.com and also on our Facebook page. I've been watching one of the monitors here. You all look fantastic, so don't worry about it, okay? We're going to get on with the questioning now. Crystal Keefe, would you come to the podium for your first question? And just a reminder, we're going to do everybody's question, 1 question at a time. And after everybody's had a chance to have a seat, we'll ask you if you have a rebuttal, and then after that, we'll go on to the next question. So, your first question, Ms. Keefe. There have been allegations of poor morale as a result of micromanaging in the school district. Do you feel this is a valid issue, and what could you, as a school board member, do to restore morale? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
I believe that it's important to have a good morale in any environment that you work in. If you do have poor morale, it's tough for your employees, which would be teachers, to do their jobs properly and give our kids the education that they need. Whether it's teaching or sports or whatever it might be, I truly believe that it's very important that we support those people who are being mentors for our children. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keefe. Up next, John Lindgren. Mr. Lindgren, your question. There have been allegations of poor morale as a result of micromanaging in the school district. Do you feel this is a valid issue? And what could you as a school board member do to restore morale? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, if it's an issue that has been brought to the forefront, there is an issue there that needs to be dealt with. What we can do is to keep working with each other, be proactive about the micromanaging, if there is or isn't. Be proactive about prevention of micromanagement. We have a great group of administrators in this school. We just need to let them do their jobs, and the role of the school board is oversight and governance. It's not, there's the day-to-day operations are not they are our concern, but they're not our concern. We hire people to take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindgren. Carol Schmitz, would you come to the podium next, please? And Ms. Schmitz, your first question, there have been allegations of poor morale as a result of micromanaging in the school district. Do you feel this is a valid issue, and what could you, as a school board member, do to restore morale? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
All right. I'm not sure if those allegations are true or not. I have no way of knowing. In my opinion, the way to prevent it is to keep the morale so up within their own compartments. I think what John said when he said that we have people hired to take care of certain areas, there are processes and people that are in place to make sure that everything is running the way it should be. And I do believe that it's always important to communicate with everyone what needs to be communicated. I think sometimes there are situations that need to be kept quiet. And I guess being on the school board would give me the opportunity to see more of that, maybe what is quiet and what is open for the community. But in my opinion, what we need to do is to let the people do their jobs and see how it all shakes out.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schmitz. Up next, Mike Spears, if you'd come to the podium, please. Okay, Mr. Spears, your first question is, there have been allegations of poor morale as a result of micromanaging in the school district. Do you feel this is a valid issue, and what could you as a school board member do to restore morale? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Okay. I think one of my favorite sayings, too, is that perception a lot of times gets to be reality, and that some items like this get blown out of proportion. One of the jobs as a school board member is to watch taxpayer dollars too, and we expect people to come to work and do their job. I don't think the micromanaging part is there. We do hire a superintendent and building leadership to run our district. We try to encourage high morale in our district and do what we can to make that happen. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spears. Up next would be Ann Ulrich. Ms. Ulrich, your question is, there have been allegations of poor morale as a result of micromanaging in the school district. Do you feel this is a valid issue, and what could you, as a school board member, do to restore morale? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
I'm not aware if it is an issue or not. I would like to be able to talk to those who are saying it is an issue and talk to others and see if it is an issue, and bring it to the faculty and staff and make sure that it is not an issue. Or if it is an issue for some people, tell them why it has to be done that way. That's all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ulrich. Up next, Ryan Walseth, if you'd come to the podium for your first question. Mr. Walseth, there have been allegations of poor morale as a result of micromanaging in the school district. Do you feel this is a valid issue, and what could you, as a school board member, do to restore morale? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Sure. As far as knowing whether it's an issue or not would involve speaking with the people involved, the teachers, the people that work for the district. I'll mention his name because I know that it was quite brave of him, but I know Reed Froyland was the one that brought that forward, and I'd certainly like to talk to him and hear more about the reasons that he felt that way. And I guess as far as doing something about it, I think that communication is key. I know it's been mentioned up here, but communication leads to transparency. Don't hide from anything. Don't run from everything. Just tell it how it is and be completely transparent, and you'll be surprised how morale is raised. As a business owner, I've been through it. Some of my best years are when I have happy employees, so it really pays off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walseth. And Michelle Westerman, would you approach the podium, please? Okay, Ms. Westerman, there have been allegations of poor morale as a result of micromanaging in the school district. Do you feel this is a valid issue, and what could you as a school board member do to restore morale? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
So one of the things I did when I decided to run was I wanted to make sure that I was well informed on all the policies, the teacher association agreement, as well as I sent out a questionnaire to some educators in the area, different districts, or not different districts, different schools, and asked them some questions. And that was one of the questions that was marked quite high, that micromanaging is something that is a huge concern for the district. So how can a school board member help facilitate change? You know, there is a chain of command, as many of the other people, candidates have mentioned. And part of it is, you know, the school board can help make decisions, but it's the superintendent and the administrative team that follow through with that. So I think we need to have an open discussion with people about micromanaging. What is exactly the root of the problem? And let's get to the bottom of the problem and see what solutions we can have. I think if we work together as a team, we can be extremely successful, but we need each and every participating member of this district to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Westerman. And was there anybody who has a rebuttal off of the first question? Okay. Before we go on to the second question, good news and bad news. We got a question from the back from the school board. Bad news if you thought, oh, one more question and this is over with. No, we've got one more for you. So we're going to ask that you sit here after we get done with the second question, and we'll take the one from the audience. And if there's anybody else who has questions, remember, right back there in the corner is where you leave those. So let's get on to question number 2. Crystal Keefe, would you reapproach the podium? Ms. Keefe, we live in a generally safe place. However, our children are our greatest assets. Do you feel the school district and its buildings are a safe place for the children, teachers, and others who work there? If not, what changes should be made? And you have 2 minutes, ma'am.
I believe that the changes that have been made to the schools have greatly improved the safety for our children. As far as does there need to be more done, I guess all of my kids now are at Lincoln, so I'm not quite sure how the changes at the middle school and elementary school are. You know, I guess I would have to see if there is any additional changes that need to be done. If there is, then that's something that the school board needs to work together to see what other schools are doing, or what we can do to ensure that every day our kids go to school, it is safe for them.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keefe. John Lindgren, you're up next. Mr. Lindgren, we live in a generally safe place. However, our children are our greatest assets. Do you feel the school district and its buildings are a safe place for the children, teachers, and others who work there? If not, what changes should be made? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I believe that that is one of the highest priorities that we have as a school district, is the safety and security of our children and our staff. Is there other things that could be done? Possibly, but I think we have a good start on what is necessary to keep staff and kids safe. We've always got to keep our eye open for the next thing coming down the road. You know, is there something better that we can do? You know, we can't say that, well, no, we're perfect, we're going to leave it like this. We need to be proactive rather than reactive, and watch trends and see what's happening, and you know, try and stay ahead of the curve. But as far as feeling not safe, That, like I said, that is a distinct priority that the school district has. Is we are a safe place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindgren. Carol Schmitz, you're up next. If you want to approach the podium, please.
I can speak for Challenger Elementary.
I'll ask you the question
School.
first.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You got a different question?
It's just good for my ego if I ask the question. Ms. Schmitz.
I was so anxious.
Just harness that energy, because here it comes. We live in a generally safe place. However, our children are our greatest assets. Do you feel the school district and its buildings are a safe place for the children, teachers, and others who work there? If not, what changes should be made? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. I can speak for Challenger Elementary School. Working there and watching the changes over the last years, it's become a very safe building, and we practice the safety with the students. Staff are very aware of what they need to do if certain codes or certain sounds go off. I think it was handled very, very well from the top down, and if anybody's questioning it, I think taking a tour of the school and seeing what there is there would be not a bad thing to do. I felt very safe working there, and I would not have any problem whatsoever sending a child there as far as safety is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schmitz. Mike Spears, if you would approach the podium, please. I'll have your second question for you.
Okay, I'll wait for you to read it.
I enjoy reading this poorly written question that I crafted earlier on our hour. It's a difficult one. Mr. Spears, we live in a generally safe place. However, our children are our greatest assets. Do you feel the school district and its buildings are a safe place for the children, teachers, and others who work there? If not, what changes should be made? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I think when we did our building project a few years ago, we went from very lax on security to very tight. Districts have thrown millions and millions of dollars at that problem, and with no guarantee that it's going to make every child secure. When you stop and think about it, there's thousands and thousands of places that people can do harm to anybody nowadays. It's probably a mental health issue with society, and sometimes you do what you can to make them secure without throwing a ton of money at it, because that money is a limited supply, and you like to keep that for educating our children. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spears. Up next, Ann Ulrich. Ms. Ulrich, we live in a generally safe place. However, our children are our greatest assets. Do you feel the school district and its buildings are a safe place for the children, teachers, and others who work there? If not, what changes should be made? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
I also feel that our schools are extremely safe at this point. We've worked over the many years to make them this way. There may be things that are coming that we have to be prepared for. We don't know what new safety systems are out there that we could install, that we could implement. We have to be ready for that. But I don't know if there is a need to improve what we have at this point. But maybe in the future there is.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ulrich. Ryan Walseth, you're up next if you'd approach the podium for your second question.
We're all just waiting to hear you say our.
Oh,
so.
it's a nightmare I'm living here. I wish I hadn't written it like this.
2 more times.
Mr. Walseth, we live in a generally safe place. However, our children are our greatest assets. Do you feel the school district and its buildings are a safe place for the children, teachers, and others who work there? If not, what changes should be made? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
I do think they're safe. I have a child in each school. I get to see the safety. I believe in our most previous bonding bill there was some significant money put into safety for the students and the staff that are there. There's always more you can do. I think Mike brought up a good point. There's a mental health aspect to it, and I know that the school district is also doing something as far as having a mental health professional hired within the school district, so that's exciting. However, I don't think we should just rest back and think we have a pretty good system. I actually had a job that took me into the Red Lake School District years ago. Full metal detectors, 2 armed guards, frisked me and checked through me, and of course, a couple of years later, they had the tragedy up there. So we can't just sit back and think we have it figured out. I think we need to keep moving forward and new technology and go from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Walseth. Michelle Westerman, would you approach the podium, please? I'll have your second question for you. Ms. Westerman, we live in a generally safe place. However, our children are our greatest assets. Do you feel the school district and its buildings are a safe place for the children, teachers, and others who work there? If not, what changes should be made? And you have 2 minutes, ma'am.
I do believe that our schools are safe, as most of the candidates have mentioned. I do agree with Ryan, though, that we do need to stay on top of things to make sure that we are up to date on technology with the security systems in our schools. And I do believe that we need to continue educating the students and teachers on the safety drills that they have. I know that they have heightened security at the doors, which I think is phenomenal. I know some parents get a little frustrated at the Challenger door waiting at the end of the day, but I do know that it is beneficial for students and teachers and other district employees as well. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Westerman. And was there anybody who had a rebuttal off of the second question? Okay, we had a question from the crowd tonight, and I'm going to read it to you. It's fairly long, so I'm kind of hoping I can read the first 2/3 of it once, and then just reference back to the actual question, if that's all right with you guys. And if you need it read again, totally understand. Just ask me, and I'll do it. The Area Learning Center had its budget slashed by approximately 50% for the 2018 and 19 school year. This again is from the crowd here tonight, not one of my questions. Yet, reportedly, school board members made little, if any, effort to reach out to the ALC staff prior to their action. If elected, will you visit with the school staff as well as administrators before taking such drastic action? Ms. Keefe, would you like to approach the podium and give us your answer to that question? You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I guess, I don't know exactly what had happened or what had gone on, but I would definitely would have probably, if that is what happened, probably approached it differently. Actually, my sister is a director at the ALC in Alexandria, and I understand the things that they deal with on a daily basis, the children that they have to deal with and the problems that they deal with already. And I guess I couldn't imagine having your budget cut in half and trying to still provide a safe and educational experience for those troubled children. So I guess I would definitely talk to them, see what you can do, if you do have to cut budget, what areas can be cut, what needs to stay, and how, I guess, better to communicate those things with them and make sure that they understand what's going on. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Keefe. John Lindgren, would you approach the podium? And if you want me to read the whole question, I will happily do that. If you want me to read the last part, that's good too.
The last part is fine.
Okay. If elected, will you visit with the school staff as well as administrators before taking such drastic actions as they depicted here at the ALC? 2 minutes, sir.
In the budget cycle, you have a system in place where the administrators look through their budgets. They bring it through the different levels, and then it comes to the board for action. So there's a fear of going back. If you're going to go and talk to each individual person that this is affecting, are we going back to that worry of micromanagement? Do people need to be talked to? Yes, but that I believe that is the administrative teams and the site teams. I believe that is their place to do the talking to the individuals that are affected by budget cuts. As a board member, we need to be open and available to talk if someone wants to talk to us about it. But I don't, like I said, my fear is looking like that micromanagement part. We have a system in place and it's used very well, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindgren. Carol Schmitz, would you approach the podium next? And Carol, would you like me to read just the last part, or would you like me to go back to the beginning of the question?
Just read the last part.
Okay. If elected, because I think this is the crux of the question. If elected, will you visit with a school staff as well as administrators before taking such drastic action as they spoke of at the ALC in this question? 2 minutes, ma'am.
I'm not sure what happened. However, I am guessing that the administration had some voice into what was kept and what was cut prior to the actual doing of it. At least from what I'm familiar with, administration is given a certain number of dollars that they need to cut, and then there may be a meeting with staff to come up with creative ways to accomplish that, and after that, then the decisions are made probably with other members of the school board. It's my understanding that administration already has a voice in that. Would I be opposed to talking to someone? No, I would not. I don't believe in micromanaging, but I also feel that if someone wants to talk to me, if I'm on the school board, I certainly would be willing to listen and to understand what it is they're concerned about.
Thank you, Ms. Schmitz. Up next would be Mike Spears, if you'd approach the podium. Mr. Spears, is it just the last part? Okay. If elected, will you visit with a school staff as well as administrator before taking such drastic action as they spoke of at the ALC? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Okay. I think there too we're back to John's comment that micromanaging was one of our earlier questions. Being on the finance committee, we did ask questions of our superintendent and our administrators, concerning that. Numbers in our ALC are not what they used to be, and a lot of classes have to be, unfortunately, are number driven. We have a limited number of dollars to work with. We cannot go out and levy for general ed dollars to pay teachers for some of those rooms, and some of the concerns in the community is to keep numbers in classrooms low. So working within a budget, it's sometimes hard, and sometimes painful cuts need to be made, and those numbers were looked at, and recommendations from the administration were made, and many school board members did ask questions and got them answered, and we had to make the hard choice. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spears. And Ulrich, would you approach the podium, please? Is it all right with you if I just ask the last part of the question? If elected, will you visit with the school staff as well as administrators before taking such drastic action as they spoke of at the ALC? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
I know that there are protocols, steps that are taken from the faculty and staff up to the school board. You have to go through this person to this person. I would love to talk to anybody who has issues, but it is a step-by-step process. The administrators should know what's going on and bring the what should be cut and what shouldn't be cut in this case to the school board. They should be aware of what's going on. I don't know if I would need to go lower unless there is a bigger issue going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ulrich. Ryan Walseth, would you approach the podium to answer this question also?
Just the last one.
Okay. If elected, will you visit with the school staff as well as administrators before taking such drastic action as they spoke of at the ALC? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Yep, definitely. I mean, I think communication, my first question, I started with communication and transparency. I think those are still important. I also think it's very important to do a thorough job of investigating something before making a decision. I was lucky enough to be a part of the president of Northland invited me to be part of the football team decision when that was cut, and we ended up bringing that back, and last year they're in the national championship. So as long as we do thorough research, investigate everything, I think that communicating with the people involved is the most important thing.
Thank you, Mr. Walseth. Michelle Westerman, would you come to the podium, please? Just the last portion, okay?
Just the last portion,
okay.
that's fine.
Ms. Westerman, if elected, will you visit with the school staff as well as administrators before taking such drastic action as they spoke of in the ALC? You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
I am fortunate enough to have had a sister-in-law who benefited from the ALC program in Thief River. She was a teen mom and now is successful and couldn't have done it without the program. I know that there are tough decisions that need to be made in regards to budget. That's something I'm very familiar with in my daily job. We have a state-operated budget, and this year we were cut by 7%. That is significant. So what we've had to do is find creative ways to make our budget stretch. Now, I do agree that you need to communicate and, like Ryan said, have transparency with people. I do know that there is a process of what the school board has and what the roles are and what the superintendent's roles are and the administrator's roles are. And I think if something isn't being communicated or somebody doesn't think that it's been communicated, then we need to go to that person, whether it's the superintendent or the administrator, and make sure that we are clearly communicating that to make sure people know what the outcome could potentially be and what is expected of them to see that budget expand, or not expand, but find alternatives for that money to go elsewhere if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Westerman. Are there any rebuttal questions off of the, or rebuttals rather, off of the question from the audience? Anyone? With that, thank you very much. Those are your candidates for Thief River Falls School District. You guys can have a seat. Thank you very much. Okay, we've had some more questions from the audience, and the first one we have here would deal with candidates for State House Representative District 1A, which would be Dan Fabian and Steve Moeller. So if you'd like, you can come back up and we'll start this whole process over again. Just one question. 1A. Just 1A. Yep, 1A. Yep. Okay. Here's the question. Representative Keel stated funds were given for broadband for the east side of Thief River Falls. When can we expect broadband expansion for the west side and north of Thief River Falls? Mr. Fabian, you're the incumbent. Why don't you go ahead and take the question first? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Sure. I've had a lot of conversations with the broadband people, the providers in the area. Dick Schoberg at Schoberg's Cable TV and Wickstrom. I've talked to the folks at Garden Valley. Talked to the people at CenturyLink. In fact, CenturyLink just now in Roseau County is connected, or will be connecting and upgrading service for just about 4,000 people. The processes that are in place, I can't speak directly to when it's going to happen in specific areas. I just know that we've made broadband grant monies available and local entities apply for those grants. They have a process that they go through. I've been told by the local providers that the money that we have appropriated is about all the money that they can put in the ground in a course of a year. So specific timetables on certain locations, I'm sorry, I can't give that. That's up to the local providers to put in those grant applications, and then they make investments based on where it's needed. I mean, obviously it's a business that they're running, and it's very expensive to put cable in the ground, and there's a limited number of dollars. But I do believe that we are making substantial progress in northwest Minnesota to get a lot of areas that are underserved and unserved so that they can have greater access to broadband. We had, in the past couple of years, it's been a high priority for many of us from rural Minnesota to get those grant dollars out, and we will continue to do that. I know Representative Keel and myself think that broadband is very important, as I'm sure everybody does. It's just a fact of life that we have. But along with that, I think that increased cellular coverage is very important too, and that requires fiber optic cable. So specific timelines, I can't give that, but I do know that it is a point of emphasis for us, and we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fabian. Steve Moeller, would you approach the podium? And I'll read the question again for you, Mr. Moeller. Representative Keel stated funds were given for broadband for the east side of Thief River Falls. When can we expect broadband expansion for the west side, north of Thief River? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. That's a great question. I'd like to know the answer to that too, because I think another day is too long. We had a question earlier when the question was asked, what can we do to attract people to come work in northwestern Minnesota? And I agree with Brent Lindstrom when we say an important piece of infrastructure is broadband internet access. And we've been promised in northwestern Minnesota access to broadband for a long time. Everyone says, well, this is a priority. This is a priority. We need broadband access. Well, we need it. And it's time for talk is over. The time for playing games with this is over. This needs to be a priority for the people for the next legislative session. If you want to talk about attracting people to come to our region, people are not going to move someplace if they don't have access to the internet. Let's be honest with you. The internet is a way of life today. People, they watch TV on it, they watch movies on it, they shop on it, they plan their trips on it, they talk to their relatives on it, they do everything on it. The internet is a way of life. And if you have a section of the community that has no access to broadband internet, we're hamstringing ourselves. We're coming into a battle for people, for workers, for brain increase in the community with one hand tied behind our back. Yeah, I don't know. I have no clue. When is it going to happen? Well, I think it should have happened this past legislative session. I think it should have happened 2 years ago. I have great cellular reception. I live in town. I have great internet access. I think everyone in northwestern Minnesota should have the great internet access I do, and that would be a priority for me next legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moeller. Any rebuttal, Mr. Fabian? All right, thank you very much. Those are the only questions the only question we had for either one of you. Thank you. We did have one audience question for the candidates from District 1B for State House, Deb Keel and Brent Lindstrom. Are you folks still here? Deb Keel is here. Brent Lindstrom, are you here? Yep, okay, thank you very, very much. This is going to be a difficult question for you to answer, Ms. Keel, because it's directed towards Mr. Lindstrom, but I think you both should have the opportunity to address the subject, okay? You're the incumbent, so I'm going to start with you. Mr. Lindstrom mentioned he is in favor of adding public transportation for Northwest Minnesota. How does he plan to fund this plan? I don't believe you can answer for him, but if you would like to speak about public transportation in Northwest Minnesota, I'd invite you to take the 2 minutes and go to the podium, ma'am. And you do have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, we do have public transportation. And we are blessed with some very good friends and neighbors that also help us to get where we need to go. And there is some services, I can't even think of the name of the company right now. If you have a medical emergency, I've actually ridden on it because I had to take my aunt to a facility in Fargo, and she was in a wheelchair, and I couldn't drive her with a wheelchair, so I did that myself. But and that's a little bit more cost, but public transportation in the way of Intercounty and Tri-Valley in our neck of the woods helps us to get around. And yes, it probably does need a little more funding, but they do a very good job of getting people where they need to go and the distance that they might need to be there, whether it's a doctor's appointment, shopping, whatever. And I think that program is very successful. Maybe we need more. I'm sure it's challenging because we're few and farther between, so it's not like loading a full bus and taking someone somewhere. So that would be my response.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keel. And Mr. Lindstrom, if you want to come to the podium. Mr. Lindstrom mentioned he's in favor of adding public transportation for Northwest Minnesota. How does he plan to fund this plan? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, I've only been at this would-be politician stuff for a couple of months, so I don't have all the answers. But working at New Flyer and Crookston, I have researched some of our customers that are obviously multi-million-dollar large city transportation organizations. And I've noticed that a lot of the way that they pay for our buses is through federal grants, maybe even some state grants, and they're talking in the hundreds of millions of dollars to buy those buses. So one of the things I would look at is looking at grants. Grants to buy the buses, grants to train and employ the drivers, to expand the services involved. But I'd also look at some of the employers too, because it's their employees. As we've talked about before, we have trouble attracting would-be employees to the industries we have up here. Let's look at them and see if they can kick back a little bit too. It's important to, if you get somebody that's working at New Flyer in Crookston, but they have to get in from Erskine, is it really going to hurt New Flyer to put in a few dollars to help that person get to work until they can maybe get on their feet, or like it was brought up, just might have a car problem that day or for a week. So I would look at federal grants, looking at some of the community, and obviously at the bottom level would be the fare structure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindstrom. That was the only question I had for either one of you. Thank you very much for coming up and addressing it. We had 2 questions from the audience for the City of Thief River Falls candidates for City Council. So they circled both Ward 3 and Alderman at Large. So could all 6 of you come up? All the candidates from City Council Ward 3 and for Alderman at Large. Didn't think being part of the elective process was going to involve this much exercise, did you? Okay, what I'm going to do, as being City Council Ward 3 was first, I'm going to start with that, and or with the top of that list, go alphabetically down to City Councilman Alderman at Large. So, if I could have Chris Anderson approach to the podium, please. Mr. Anderson, if a pool is preferred over a splash park and the estimated price point of a pool is $3 million to $4 million, how do we pay for that when nobody wants to raise property taxes? You have 2 minutes, sir.
To be honest, I couldn't actually answer that. If I were to answer something like that, that'd be giving a false statement about someone. So that's something I'd have to do, the city, learn, figure out how to, find the money to do it without raising taxes. So that's what I'd have to do. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Gary Hintz, would you approach the podium next? And the audience question for you, Mr. Hintz, is if a pool is preferred over a splash park and the estimated price point of a pool is $3 to $4 million, how do we pay for that when nobody wants to raise property taxes? You have 2 minutes, sir.
We'd have to look in, I feel, outside grants. I know there's money to help in that situation, but at the same time, like you said, no one wants to raise property taxes. So I think we'd have to look through outside help, some personal backers maybe, some people within the community, alumni, people that have had their roots here before and want to see that happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hintz. Mike Lawrenson, would you come to the podium, please? And I'll read the question to you, Mr. Lawrenson. If a pool is preferred over a splash park and the estimated price point of a pool is $3 to $4 million, how do we pay for that when no one wants to raise property taxes? You have 2 minutes, sir.
I'd first probably go out to neighboring towns to see how they did their pools. A good example would be Warroad's pool. That is not a normal pool that you'd see it's actually a like a sand or gravel bottom, and it has a filtering process, and it's a lot cheaper. It could be an alternative, and again, I would have to talk to my ward to make sure I get some feedback from them if that is indeed something that they would want. Furthermore, like Gary was saying, I would look towards private individuals that could potentially help donate. The building that we're in right now is only here because of people that donated to put it back into its position, or it's into its wonderful place that it's in right now. It's like back to its, I want to say, almost original state that it was. That was not done without a lot of sweat, labor, and donators. And I would go push to try and see what I could do to have other individuals, not only in Thief River Falls, but the area that could help support that.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrenson. Edward Turn, would you come to the podium, please? And Mr. Turn, I'll ask you the same question. If a pool is preferred over a splash park and the estimated price of a pool is $3 to $4 million, how do we pay for that when no one wants to raise property taxes? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Well, I think I kind of go back to my comments earlier. You know, you can build something for $3-4 million, but going forward, how are you going to maintain it? Where's the operating money coming from? And where's the $3-4 million coming from? As far as pools go, you know, it's wonderful to have it, but to envision spending $3-4 million, how are you going to pay for it? You can go to individuals, which are great people to donate, but you got a big ticket. And again, the maintenance. If you go around to different towns, and I'm a little familiar with some of them, they're struggling and to keep it going, and that's a huge task. And I'm not sure that to put ourselves in that kind of debt would be very prudent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turn. Steve Narvarud, would you approach the podium, please? Mr. Narvarud, if a pool is preferred over a splash park and the estimated price point of a pool is $3 to $4 million, how do we pay for that when no one wants to raise property taxes? You have 2 minutes, sir.
The only way to do it is private pool. That is the only possible way that we could do that right now. There just aren't enough public dollars out there to, you'd be looking at a ridiculous amount of funding. Could it be done? Yes. Could we bond for it? Yes. Do you want that kind of dollar on your tax right now? No, you probably don't. As the mayor has so aptly said, in 10 years, it might be a different story. Things might be changed by then, and it might be a much easier thing to do. I really think in this case, the only way this is going to happen is private dollars. Do I think they're out there? Yes. Do I think it's possible that we can arrange to make some of those private dollars available for this? Yes. Having said that, it takes people to get together and do it. It really does. That's what it really takes. It's not like raising $200,000. You're talking, 10 times that. So, he's pushy. So that's where I think we really need to go. And I hope to have a committee together by the beginning of this year to get that done. I really do. I think we can do it that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narvarud. And finally, we have Joshua Thompson. If you'd approach the podium, please, sir. And Mr. Thompson, if a pool is preferred over a splash park and the estimated price point of a pool, is $3 to $4 million, how do we pay for that when no one wants to raise property taxes? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
That's a good question. And I don't think it's one that can be answered by one person individually. I think it's a group of people that need to sit down together to answer that question. But you got neighboring communities that have outdoor pools, such as War Road, Red Lake Falls. I know War Road, they got a lot of money, Marvin Windows, their mayor, They got a lot of funds coming right there from just the family. So I'd start there and I'd ask them how they did it. I'd try to get some answers from the people who've done it. From there, I'd go to the private sector and I'd, try to see if I can get bonds to, offer people or businesses the opportunity to invest. If you have a pool, you have to have a comprehensive business plan to run it. And if you run it, you have to make sure that it's going to be profitable. If it's profitable, then you can find a way to make it pay back any debt. Therefore, I think that if we reach out to other people, we could make it happen. If the community wants it, I think it could very easily be done. It's just going to take some work. I do know that for a lot of corporations and businesses, there are tax write-offs for people who donate up to $1,000 a year. And I think that if you reach out, you can definitely find the people, especially in the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Are there any rebuttals off that first question? Okay. If not, we will go on to the second question. And Mr. Anderson, Chris Anderson, you want to come to the podium, please? Your question is, would you support curbside recycling? You have 2 minutes, sir.
Yes and no, I guess. For the trailer parks that I manage right now, it would be convenient for them just for the short streets we have and everything, make it easier. As far as people in town, it might be a little different going through the alleys and stuff, having trash out in your front yard all the time. But I think it would be convenient for some parts of town, not so much for others. But I guess that would be up to the people what they want. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Gary Hintz, would you approach the podium next, please, sir? Mr. Hintz, would you support curbside recycling? You have 2 minutes.
Yes, I would. The only thing I would have to say is what is the hidden cost for the recycling bins to the public, to the city of Thief River Falls? Would it be an increase in garbage that they already pay on their city bill? I have a family of 7. We recycle all the time. So yes, I do support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hintz. Mike Lawrenson, would you approach next, please? Mr. Lawrenson, would you support curbside recycling? And you have 2 minutes.
I am not a fond, or I'm not in favor of the bags that we currently use, and I would look at looking at our trash pickup altogether. I am a strong supporter for recycling. With 11 kids, you would be surprised how little trash we actually have. In fact, I'm over a year plus bags ahead in stock just because my kids are very dedicated to helping us recycle. I would look at neighboring towns to see how they have done it and try and learn from their mistakes, find out what it would actually cost to us if there will be an increase, and then in turn push that out to my ward to see if that would be something that they would be interested in. Again, the people's voice matters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrenson. Edward Turn, would you come to the podium, please? And I'll ask you the same question. Mr. Turn, would you support curbside recycling? And you have 2 minutes.
I would support it. As was said earlier, a lot of towns around are doing it, and it's very successful. Should probably go do a survey in some way with utility bills or whatever to, if we could get a feedback of the people, how favorable it would be for the residents, and also I guess what the cost might be, but the benefit of recycling. Certainly in today's world we need to be doing more of that, and there's talk with all the plastics out there, even straws and everything else of what's out there in an environment, and the world we're in, we need to be prudent and protect our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tern. Steve Narverud, would you come to the podium also for this question? Mr. Narverud, would you support curbside recycling? And you have 2 minutes.
I am in favor of curbside recycling to a point. It would have to be private. I don't think the city can undertake it. We don't have a place for storage, first of all. So, and in order to do it, you have to store it because it has to be hauled in the cities. There's no one up here right now that takes it. One of our private haulers has discussed this issue with us. He is considering it. There is a cost involved. He would have to charge extra to do this. It would be curbside recycling, however. It would also be front side. We don't have room in our alleys for that lift truck. So you would still have to put your garbage out back and up front with the recycling. We do have a pretty good system right now. I know it's a problem for some people because it's tough to get it. A lot of people don't have cars that can haul it, but we really do have a good way of getting rid of it right now. And if you look at some of the larger counties around us, that's exactly what they're doing. They're forcing people to carry it to these dumpsters. Right now, that still is our best option. Like I said, otherwise it's going to be up front, and you're going to see those things sitting up front. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narverud. Joshua Thompson, would you approach the podium, please? And our question for you, Mr. Thompson, is would you support curbside recycling? And you have 2 minutes, sir.
I'm all for recycling. However, I'm indifferent on the curbside recycling because it's not a decision that I would make on my own. I believe that I'd have to see how many people would be in support of it, first of all, and then I'd have to see how we can do it. The funding, the cost, whether it's going to benefit the city, the people, or if it's going to end up raising taxes. That's the last thing I would want to see done. I know there's a lot of people that definitely don't like the taxes the way they are now. So I would try to see the best way that we could implement it if it was something that the people strongly were in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Are there any rebuttals based off the second audience question? Anyone? You gentlemen can take your seat then. Thank you very much. City Council candidates from Ward 3 and also Alderman at Large, thank you very much. Well, Mayor Holman, what did you think? A lot of good, brave souls that came up here and answered a lot of questions. Not an easy thing to do. You've been there.
Yeah, it's a good turnout, and it's really nice to see people engaged in what government does for us.
I'm impressed with the amount of people here at the Carnegie today.
Yes, it's a great building, and like I said, it's a chance for people to get out and see what their elected officials are like, and hopefully they can stick around and meet them in person.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody who was here. I want to remind you, if you want to see the candidate's profile, trfchamber.com/candidate-debate. trfchamber.com/candidate-debate. So thank you to all the candidates, Thief River Falls Chamber of Commerce, Thief River Falls Radio, and of those in our audience tonight and those of you listening on Thief River Falls Radio or on the World Wide Web, we'd especially like to thank you, as you are the voters. Good night. I'll send it over to you, Mark.
All right. Thank you very much, Grant Nelson. And there you go. That'll conclude tonight's coverage on KTRF Radio.